All right, I think we might as well start. Coming to the end of another quite long day. So we only have a few questions, which probably may be a good thing. But if you do have questions as we go along, please feel free to ask as we go along. Yeah, this makes it easier. We can get into all of these things. So let's see. Dear Ajahn, since rebirth is such a core teaching of the Buddha, why are some monk teachers downplaying its importance? Why? Don't know why. I think that is a very, very bad idea. I think we should not downplay it. I think we should, in fact, play it exactly the way the Buddha talked about it. We should see it as a core idea, as an idea of right view, as something that kind of enables a practice when it's thought about in the right way, not with too many problems, but in the right way. And so we should really do that. I think one of the reasons why people downplay it is that people think this is like a cultural thing. This is an idea that existed in Buddha 2,500 years ago, and that in modern world we don't believe in things like this. I think this is one of the reasons. However, there is a tendency in the world to be a bias towards modern ideas. We tend to always think that modern ideas are the best, are the most advanced, are the ones that we should believe in. That's kind of a typical thing for human beings. And so we tend to prefer modern ideas, and we think that the ancient ones are, they were kind of less advanced or whatever. But that is just a bias, and it often isn't true. Very often you will find that modern ideas are actually worse than ancient ideas. It's just that we are biased in this way, so we don't understand it. And so I would say, if you don't believe in rebirth, well, that is the bias. That is where you have a problem. That is a cultural thing where you are trapped by the modern culture. It is not that the ancient Indians were trapped in their culture. It's more that we are trapped in our culture. And so we think that we can somehow supersede the Buddha's teaching, go beyond that, and come up with some better ideas that do not include rebirth. And that is really problematic. But we are equally trapped. Every generation is trapped in their own culture. And we just have to recognize the limits of that culture. One of the limits is our lack of understanding of the mind. This is what the Indians were far better at than what we are today in the present world. And so that insight into the mind gave them the opportunity to understand rebirth, whereas we don't really understand that rebirth in the same way. So we are the ones who are trapped in the culture. We are the ones who are lacking historical perspective. By we I mean our, people in the world in general, and not the ancient Indians. And so it's kind of fascinating. So the cultural baggage that some secular Buddhists talk about, the cultural baggage is actually the cultural baggage of the secular Buddhists, not the cultural baggage of the suttas or the Dhamma. It's almost the other way around. That's how I understand this. So it is really, really important, and the Dhamma doesn't really work without it. Okay. Dear Ajahn, my friend said that if you rescue a dog or animal, you take up its bad karma, because it is born a dog because of its bad karma. Now that you have saved it, it cannot suffer from its bad karma, so now its bad karma goes to you, and you suffer. Your friend needs to go to some good Buddhist classes to understand Dhamma properly. This is not correct at all. The truth is that if you rescue a dog or an animal, you make good karma for yourself, and that animal must have also had some good karma to be rescued by someone else. So that is the good karma of the animal, that it actually gets rescued by you or someone else. And so we should allow that dog or animal to rejoice and to enjoy that result of the good karma they have made in the past at some time. Maybe they used to come to the BGF in the past life, and now they get rescued by another BGF member as the consequences of that. Maybe, I don't know. But there is obviously some good karma going on there. So no, this idea that you have bad karma and you have to kind of play it out is a very simplistic idea of karma. Karma is very complex. There's all kind of good and bad karma interplaying with each other. And that dog might be rescued, Maybe if you look after it really well, the dog becomes really happy, and then it gets reborn as a human being again because of that. That can very easily happen. And so you're actually helping an animal out of that trap of being an animal by looking after it, by helping it in this way. So you are making good karma, and the animal is experiencing the results of good karma. Sometimes people say that you should always experience the results of your good karma, or your bad karma. And this idea is used in many different circumstances. But if that really were the case, then if you got sick or you break a leg or whatever, you shouldn't go to the doctor. Because you need to experience that bad karma, right? But you can see how crazy that idea is. It doesn't make any sense. If you break a leg, for goodness sake, get to the hospital and get a cast on your leg or whatever, because otherwise it's going to be terrible for you. In fact, I would argue you're letting all kind of bad karma ripen if you're really just being stupid, and that stupidity is leading to the suffering, not the bad karma. And there are some good examples of that in the suttas, where the Buddha goes to the Jains and he said, this Jain ascetic, they're standing on one leg on a hot rock in the middle of the sun, and they're standing there. And the Buddha says to them, well, are you experiencing this suffering because of bad karma, or because you're standing on one leg in the hot sun? Oh yeah, you have a point. If you stop standing on one leg in the hot sun, you would stop, experience that bad karma. And so they, yeah, okay, maybe you have a point. And so they kind of, maybe that changes their view. So we have to know that suffering comes from many causes, and then we get an idea how this works. Okay, dear Ajahn, I am one of those people who gets inspired, then apply the teaching for a short time, and then get disillusioned and feel that the teaching is too difficult to practice. Example, practice metta with difficult people I deal with every day, but they make me angry, and then I feel bad because I fail to stay calm and fail my metta practice. How do I continue to persevere and not think that the teaching is too difficult to apply? Thank you. You have to. One of the ways is to look at other people who have succeeded before you. A lot of people have made a lot of progress in the Dhamma, and they have changed. Sometimes maybe you can have examples here at the BGF. People give a talk about how the Dhamma has changed them. Changed their life. Some people who really have been changed because of that. And I myself have seen enormous changes in myself over the 30 years as a monk. Really transforming changes. And so you need to just be clear about that it takes time, that it is a matter of perseverance, that you need to change your outlook very slowly. And one of the things that you have to remember is also how to deal with those difficult people. If you go in your metta practice and you sit down and you say, may that person be happy, may that person be happy, it can be quite shallow. It's not deep enough to really have an effect. And this is why one of the reasons we will see later on this retreat to overcome anger is actually looking at the people, thinking about them in the right way is far more powerful. So if you have someone who makes you angry at work, instead of just saying, may they be happy and may you be well, and kind of papering over the problem, you have to change your entire outlook, how to think about those people. And so a person who makes you angry, the reason why they make you angry is because, as I said before, you feel that this person is kind of, you make it personal. They are dealing with me in a bad way. They are treating me badly. They are making me angry. And you forget that that person is only playing out their own habits. This is their habits. This is who they are. They are stuck in that way of being. They've been conditioned in the past. They probably can't be any other way. You think they can. That's why you get angry. But if you understand they can't, they have to be like that. They are just like a robot. Then you don't get angry anymore. If one of these kind of vacuum cleaners, you see these as a kind of robot vacuum cleaners, if it doesn't do a good job, do you get angry with that robot vacuum cleaner? Probably not. It doesn't make any sense. Do you kick it because you get angry? No. It's big dumb because it's a robot. But people are a bit like robots. People are programmed in a certain way. They can't be any other way. They have to be like that. In fact, they probably want to be kind. Deep down, we all know that kindness is the way to go. It's just that they can't be kind because the programming is different. This is how you need to think, and you need to think this thought again and again, and also you need to believe it. It's not just superficially, you need to think that it's true. Because this arises out of the non-self teaching of the Dhamma. The non-self teaching means that we are the conditioning that has worked on us. I have said, mentioned this particular simile every time I think I come to the BGF for the last 10 years or 12 years, or I don't know, can't remember how long I've been coming here. But every time, and this is such an important idea, and I'm going to repeat it probably until I die, yeah? Because it is such a fundamental idea for overcoming these kind of defilements. Understanding, looking at people in the right way, understanding that it is not about you. If that bad person, that difficult person at work was being difficult with someone else, you wouldn't be so concerned. If you see someone on the street shouting to someone else, you just walk past. You don't kind of take it personally. But it's exactly the same as if they're shouting at you. You take it personally because now it seems like it is towards you, but it's actually got nothing to do with you. It has to do with the other person, their defilements, their conditioning, the way they are. So next time you look at them, see that conditioning, see their robot nature, see their conditioned nature, understand that they have no choice, understand that they probably would rather be kind than to be the way they are. And the moment you do that, you can have compassion for that very difficult person. Because actually, they are just trapped. They are being tortured by their own stupidity. And whether you are being tortured by an instrument of torture, or you are being tortured by your own crazy thoughts, it's basically the same thing. This person is being tortured by their own stupid mind, which is the same thing as being tortured by any kind of instrument of torture. If someone is sick, how do you feel about them? Do you get angry with the person who gets sick? You got sick, that was stupid of you, don't get sick again in the future. That's crazy, because you get sick because of cause and conditions. You can't really control that. If you have a human body, you get sick. That's what human bodies do. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we don't want these human bodies anymore, because they are useless. They get old, they get sick, and they die. Who wants a human body? So you don't want those human bodies. And the point is that someone who is a very bad person, who does stupid things, they are sick in exactly the same way. So if you get sick angry at a sick person, that's stupid. If you get angry at someone who is mentally sick, it's exactly the same thing. They are mentally ill. They are out of their mind, especially if they get angry, especially if they treat people in the wrong way, if they don't understand their insensitivity towards you. Even if they don't get angry, they might be insensitive and stupid. So you need to rethink things, yeah, and you need to reprogram it again and again and again, understanding that this person is probably suffering, understanding all of these things, and gradually you change. As long as you think it's about you, as long as you take it personally, you will get angry. It is not personal. All right. Dear Ajahn Brahmali, trust you are in great health and all is well. Okay, good. Ajahn, my father passed away 62 years ago. 1. Is it still meaningful for me to offer prayers and merits for him now? Yes, it is still meaningful, because you don't know where he was reborn. And if he was reborn as a preta or peta, then he may still receive those merits. So please do that, and remember that even if you offer that to your father, even if he cannot receive it, there will be other beings there who can receive it. So we should always share merit, regardless of regardless of the circumstances. Is it possible to know if he is reborn and which realm? Thank you. It is possible, but not easy. So this is what you have to do to find out. Are you ready? So you have to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, you have all the way to the end. Get some really deep state of samadhi. Yeah. And after getting into the 4th jhana, then you direct your mind to the rebirth of other beings. Yeah, then you can find out. That's the way to find out. So though, if you're really keen on finding out, you practice incredibly hard the Dhamma in this way. Yeah, this is my trick to get you to practice Dhamma. Yeah. So this is the best way. Sometimes people go to kind of famous monks and they say, "Oh, what happened to my mum? What happened to my dad?" And they kind of they tell them, But that is very unreliable. I heard many years ago there was a very famous monk who had died, And some people, and there was two different, so they were both considered arahants, yeah? And so people went to these arahants and they asked, where did this famous monk die? What happened to this famous monk? Yeah? And one of those monks, he said, oh yeah, no, he was an arahant, yeah, so he doesn't get reborn at all. And the other arahant said, oh, he was reborn in hell. So one person died, one person said the dead person was an arahant, the other person said the dead person was reborn in hell. And they're both supposed to be arahants who said this. So, you know, this is what I mean. It's very uncertain, yeah? So don't don't believe everything you hear, that's what I say. But believe something that you hear, yeah? If I say it, you can believe it. No, I always say to people, even what I say, be circumspect about anything you hear, yeah? And this is true. Because what I do is explaining you the suttas, but also read the suttas for yourself. How do you understand this? And sometimes you may think that some of the things I say may not be complete, perhaps, or maybe sometimes I get the interpretation wrong, yeah? So be circumspect regardless. I do my best. I'm not here to trick you or anything like that. I'm not here to cheat you or anything. That's not my purpose. But still, yeah, I don't claim to be perfect, yeah, and so as long as I don't claim that, you should be circumspect. Anyway, dear Ajahn, how do we encourage people who knows a lot but are declining to practice? Yeah, so they know a lot but very superficially. They don't really know it. That's the problem. Yeah, they are intellectual Buddhists, and there are a lot of intellectual Buddhists. And they enjoy discussing dependent origination. They enjoy discussing the meaning of various words and concepts, but they don't actually get into the real practice because it hasn't touched them in a way. And so one of the important things is that the Dhamma should really touch you on an emotional level. That is when it's powerful. And so all of these things should ideally bring up some strong feeling of urgency. That's why I talked about the feeling of urgency before. Yeah, the feeling of being inspired by the teachings, all of these kind of things. And then that is what drives you forward on the path. So if you feel that you lose your inspiration, try to come back to the Dhamma again. Listen to some teacher who can make you inspired, someone who can kind of give you a little bit push in the backside to move you in the right way. Yeah, that's kind of the idea here. So what can you do to encourage those who don't practice? It's not so easy, yeah, because people have this intellectual tendency, and often it is not easy to do that. But maybe just remind them of why they're learning the Dhamma. Yeah, remind them of what's the point of just learning things, dry things. You are like the spoon in the soup. Yeah, the spoon doesn't taste the soup; it just sits in the soup. Do you want to be the spoon, or you want to be the tongue who actually tastes what is going on? You can experience the Dhamma rather than just knowing kind of words and phrases which don't touch you in a deep way. So it is hard to change other people. Yeah, the best way to change others is usually to change yourself. If you can prove that you have changed because of the Dhamma, you have become a different person, then that is likely to affect other people around you, because they will see the transformation, and that will often be very powerful. Okay, we are coming to the last question. Sukhi hotu Ajahn Brahmali. May you be happy, Ajahn Brahmali. That's very nice. My question is regarding frugality. Any advice on how to reduce the habit of shopaholic? So, shopaholic. But don't worry too much about being a little bit of a shopaholic. It's not the worst thing in the world, right? There are worse things than being a shopaholic. If you can be a kind person, if you can treat people well, if you can develop metta and karuna in your life, you're already doing really, really well. And as you do that, the shopaholic tendencies will be gradually reduced, because you will find meaning somewhere else. The deeper you take your kindness, the more you remove the defilements of the mind, the more you remove the stupid ways of living, the more you build up metta and karuna, you will actually overcome these things. Very often we are looking for shortcuts in the path, but remember all the problems on the path, including shopaholicism, or whatever the right word is, all of these things are overcome by the Noble Eightfold Path. So make that the mainstay. Remember, maybe one of the ways of overcoming the shopaholic mind is remember the dangers of sensuality. Yeah, the sensual pleasures of the world, because you are enjoying basically sensual pleasure. That's what it is about, being a shopaholic. Yay, these things! But remember that they not really very meaningful. They don't give you any satisfaction. At the end of the day, you keep on chasing things that never really give any satisfaction. But maybe you are being a shopaholic because you are using that to overcome suffering. Maybe that's one of the reasons. A lot of the things that drive human beings are driven by our suffering in life. Why are people so addicted to their mobile phones? One of the main reasons is because of suffering. You want to get out of suffering. And as soon as a little bit of suffering arises, you take out your mobile phone and you start scrolling something. I don't even know what people scroll, but you scroll something. TikTok or whatever it is. And it's all about coming out of suffering. I can see that tendency myself sometimes. You are in your kuti, you feel a bit dissatisfied, disgruntled, everything is kind of yucky or whatever. And then it's very easy to kind of start listening to a talk or watching some kind of YouTube video or whatever. It happens very, very easily because you are not really satisfied with what's going on. And so you shouldn't be too surprised that you end up doing things like shopaholics or any other thing that distracts you from your suffering. As we saw in the Sutta last week or the last few days, the escape for ordinary people from suffering is sensuality. That is where people escape. They don't know any other escape. And so you're going to find it in that realm somewhere. Eating, shopping, entertainment, whatever it might be. That's where you're going to look for that escape. But ideally, you start looking for the escape in the Dhamma instead. Looking for happiness and joy in the Dhamma, in your meditation, in being kind, in living well. And as you do that, you are exchanging one happiness for another one. And that is really powerful down the track. So don't be too ambitious. Don't think that you're going to change super fast. Don't try to force yourself to be a better person. Be kind to yourself. Understand that you are a shopaholic for a reason. There's a reason why we do these things. Be kind. Have compassion for yourself. And as you have compassion for yourself, as you have kindness for yourself, new avenues open up. Suddenly you see what's going on. You don't judge yourself harshly. Instead, you have a cool mind that evaluates the situation, and that's where where things open up, and the new avenues for overcoming these things kind of become apparent to you, and you know what you have to do. That is the wise thing. How to do these things in a wise way. So it is difficult to be wise. You have to be wise to be wiser. So you have to develop this slowly, gradually, stage by stage, and then you will kind of be getting there. What? That's the problem, right? That's the problem. Are there any more? That's the last question in the box. Are there any more questions? Yeah, please.
Hi, Ajahn. Just a curious question about dogs and cats.
Okay.
I have my best friend. He had this kind of thinking. It's okay, well-to-do, He told me that a lot of us do a lot of charities to human beings, but not on animals. So he focused on animals, see? So it's not a bad thing. But he started to adopt cats, stray cats from around his house. Now he got plenty of cats in the house and spend a fortune on the cats. Okay? And some cats pass away. And we were talking and say he feels sad that the cat passed away. And he says that if I'm reborn again, I will look for them, see. So I'm not sure whether the conscious mind, if you keep on thinking about cats, looking for cats, will he end up in the animal realm?
That's a very, very good question, actually. I think there is a chance that he will, right? There is a nice sutta called the Kukaravatika Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 57, which talks about someone who practices what they call the dog duty practice. So they pretend to be like a dog, or they pretend to be like an ox. And then they go to the Buddha and they say, well, what will happen to us? We are practicing like dogs and oxes. So they would lie down, sleep on the ground. They would eat from the ground like a dog. They would crawl around on four legs. They would basically pretend to be like dogs. And so they asked the Buddha, what's going to be our destination in the future if we practice like this? And the Buddha said, you have two possible destinations. Either get reborn in hell, or if the dog duty practice works, you get reborn as a dog, because you are developing the dog mind, right? And I think the danger that your friend is putting himself into, he may be developing a bit of attachment to those cats, and gradually developing maybe a bit of mind like a cat as well, and he wants to see them again. And so maybe I'm exaggerating now. Maybe it depends on how far he takes that. But if he takes it very, very far, then it might actually have some kind of repercussions like that. However, if he is smart and he does that as an act of charity, and he really looks after those cats in a good way, then obviously he's also making some good karma. Yeah, maybe quite a bit of good karma, looking after those animals. Because stray cats in KL, I'm sure it's not very nice to be a stray cat in KL, and they kind of get a much nicer life, being with your friend or whatever. So in one sense, he's doing good. So it's hard to really know. It depends on his mind and exactly what he's doing to decide where this is going. So he might be doing a lot of good karma, but if he is not careful, he might also be leaning a little bit in the wrong direction as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah. So let's have a quick look. So just one more question here. So, hi Ajahn, sorry to disagree. Okay. A little bit of what Ajahn said about the path of Bodhisattva. Buddha doesn't come from randomness. Randomness will not be compatible with the law of cause and condition effects. If there are cause and conditions for the Buddha to arise, is it not the path of Bodhisattva? Does the Buddha didn't say about the qualities needed for becoming a Buddha? Thanks again. So the path for becoming the Buddha is the same path as for becoming an Arahant, because you need samadhi to become enlightened. And actually the Buddha finds that out in his last life. That's the whole point. He achieved samadhi. And to achieve that samadhi, well, you need all the qualities of the Noble Eightfold Path. That's kind of how you get samadhi. And so the path is basically the same. These are the factors of awakening. An awakening mind, whether you are a Buddha or an Arahant, the awakened mind is essentially the same kind of mind. So the Buddha had obviously, remember, even when there is no Buddha around, there are people who practice a long way on this path. Before the Buddha arose in the world, there were people practicing in the Vedic tradition, the Brahmanical tradition, and they achieved samadhi. So they were very close to enlightenment already, even though there was no Buddha in the world, even though they were not bodhisattvas. So a lot of people actually are quite close to enlightenment. And so all you need is that little spark of right view. So all you need is one person who practices in the right way and who rejects the idea of rebirth for eternity in the Brahma realm, and who investigates a little bit more deeply. And if they do, they become a Buddha. So it's not the gap isn't that great, and you don't need to practice a bodhisattva path over eons. The Buddha never talks about the bodhisattva path. The Buddha only talks about the Noble Eightfold Path. The bodhisattva path is a later development, and if the Buddha didn't talk about the bodhisattva path, why should anyone else talk about it? If the Buddha, who is the greatest spiritual master in the history of the world, if he didn't mention it, why should anyone else? It doesn't make any sense. The Buddha, if it was important, the Buddha would have talked about it. And so the point is, when you go from life to life, you don't remember what you did in your last life. And so there isn't this path that you build up over a lifetime. Doesn't really, to my mind, doesn't make any sense, because you forget things in the meantime. I think it's a distraction. I think it's a danger. And sometimes it appeals to the ego. I want to be a bodhisattva. I want to save everyone. It sounds really nice, but actually it can be, because everyone has egos, it has a tendency to appeal a little bit too much to that. And then you do something which actually is impossible and cannot be done. And so I would say, be very careful with these things, because these things are later developments in the Dhamma. and they're not authorized by the Buddha, I think that it's dangerous to follow those kind of ideas. Anyway, that's my view, and you are, of course, very welcome to disagree if you wish, but that's kind of how I tend to see things. All right. Any further questions before we call it a day? Okay, looks like everyone is content or tired or whatever, or maybe both. So let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha as we normally do at this point.